Hey, it's Jeffrey Gurian for Comedy Matters TV, and my guest today on Sirius XM's Bennington show was the legendary Robert Klein. We talked a lot about our mutual friend, Rodney Dangerfield, who you can see right here, who wrote to me many years ago, "To Jeff, you've got my respect," Rodney Dangerfield, the first big star that I ever wrote for. So Robert had some very interesting things to say about Rodney. Check it out. Hey guys, thanks for watching Comedy Matters TV. To check out some of our other videos, click on the boxes on either side of me. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Not just for me, but for my parents.
Hi, this is Robert Klein, and you're watching Comedy Matters TV.
Boom. Yeah.
All right.
So you were in the middle of saying about Rodney that he had two little kids?
Yes, Rodney came home and found the two little kids unsupervised. His wife was passed out, and he decided to open a club. The club actually opened in 1968.
You mean that's why he opened the club? Because he didn't want to go on the road anymore? He couldn't trust his wife with the kids?
That's correct.
Wow.
And it was very heroic because she was incapable of taking care of them, poor thing. But it was a time when nightclubs were dead. They were killed by television. Ironically, television killed nightclubs, and then, ironically and counterintuitively, created a whole new world of nightclubs, comedy clubs, starting with the HBO specials that I did, and with Evening at the Improv and all that kind of stuff. But Rodney borrowed money from friends, including me. I had $11,000 to my name in the bank. I gave him $5, no interest or anything.
Did he ever pay you back?
He certainly
Oh,
did.
Oh, yeah.
He paid me back in a year, and it was so successful he had to borrow it back briefly for a few weeks to pay off some taxes. But he borrowed money from a bank, and he borrowed money from friends and an aunt, and it took $220,000, and he kept the mob at arm's length. They adored him, and they say, "Rodney, anything you need," they want him to, and he said, "Oh, no, I'm fine." And I think there was one stink bomb thrown at the place once, but so he was,
Was he partners with Tony in those days? Tony Bavacqua?
No, Tony Bavacqua was a sweet guy who was a bass player at the Living Room, which was a club on 2nd Avenue, and Rodney made him the manager of the club and immediately gave him a quarter equity without having invested any money. He just thought that he would take better care of the place if he actually had an interest, which he did.
Yeah, sure.
It sounded ominous, it's stereotypic. Hey, Tony Bavacqua. He was a sweet boy that played the bass. And he didn't know how to run a club, but he knew how not to run one because the Living Room had become a very badly run place. So, he had his club. He had Big Bob, the
Bobby from Scotland. Remember Bobby? Yeah.
Big Bobby, the maitre d', and the Chinese bartender, Teddy Wong. He had unfortunately not put a lavatory in his own dressing room.
Right, I remember.
So, when acts like David Fry played there, he had, in his contract, he had to have ice in a bucket so he could pee in it. And he did plenty of peeing because he did plenty of drinking. But more than once, the door would be open, a slit there, and some woman is in a date upstairs, and she goes down to the lavatory and speaking. There's Rodney Dangerfield, and plenty of times it was a little hanky-panky.
Right, of course.
Before she went back up again. You had to be very brave. I know I'm a boy, but sex with Rodney Dangerfield doesn't sound like the most appealing thing. It's like the first guy that ate a clam. Raw.
Yeah.
He had to be hungry,
And you'd have to have no respect for yourself in order to have sex with Rodney Dangerfield.
He was a complete contradiction in terms. He was moral in his own way. When the cops were ticketing the limousines during the prom season in front of his club because they were looking for money, he refused to pay, and he went huffing and puffing to the local precinct and told them he'd make a big stink, that they had no right to do that, and it stopped. He was amazing, and he had street smarts. When he quit show business, his wife said, "Oh, let's quit this business." She had been a singer, and he never left his blood. But he started as a canvasser in aluminum siding, working, Joe Ansis.
He and Joe Antis used to work together.
Well,
right?
Joe got him into the thing, but he started at the lowest rung. Canvasser is knocking on a door cold. Might you be interested in aluminum siding? It's the hardest thing. And if a sale is made, you get a little money. In 3 years, Rodney had a company of his own with 50 salesmen.
Wow, I never knew that. But he was Jack Roy in those days, right? When he was
He was born Jacob Cohen in Babylon, Long Island. But his father, Phil, changed the name to Roy and became Phil Roy. He was in an act called Bedini and Roy. I think, they were patter and songs. Then his father quit show business and then quit him. He lived in Queens with his mother and his sister, and his father lived in Manhattan and didn't see him for 17 years.
Wow.
So, and I met him at the end of his life, the father. He had throat cancer, and they had, if I may use the word, rapprochement. Rapprochement.
Rapprochement.
Rapprochement sounds better.
It does, yeah.
And I remember the father saying, he was not famous yet, Rodney. He was working on it. He said, keep up that no respect thing. It's good. That no respect thing. Keep hitting it. It's good. And, I remember when Rodney invented that. He told me that the name Rodney Dangerfield, he took out of a Manhattan phone directory.
Oh, really? I thought a bartender gave him that name or something. There were so many stories about it.
There were.
But
he told me he was playing a club up in Washington Heights, and he needed a name. He didn't want. He goes, he had been doing okay as Jack Roy before he quit. That's the story he told me.
By the time I met him, he was almost too famous to appear in his own club anymore. He had gotten so big that he stopped performing, because when I was with him around 1980, he was still performing at the club, sitting in a bathrobe and pajamas in his dressing room.
Yes, unfortunately, those of us that knew him well were often treated to, he didn't mean to, but you could see these things, they were testicles, actually, resting on the chair when his legs were open, and, he was just, I don't know, there was a sort of strain of immodesty about him, although, he was very clean he always was impeccable about his hair, and it reminds me of one of his jokes. I'll tell you, I was never neat, My mother used to yell at me. I had a sloppy room, My brother, he had everything lined up, his combs, his brushes, his nail files, and everything. So what did it mean? What is he now? He's a men's room attendant.
That's hilarious. He told me he goes, Jeff, what's the difference between Jews and Italians? I'm like, I don't know, Rodney, what's the difference? He goes, they both take a leak in the sink, but the Jews take the dishes out first.
Yeah, he talked a lot about Jews and Italians and even wise guys at the Copa. He could say the most incredible things, and they just loved him. They ate it up. They loved it. Because he was the everyman, he was the one, the original album, Rodney Dangerfield, I Get No Respect, he said, I'll tell you, I got a car that's, it's easy to find, it's always up on the lift. I got a car with more miles on it vertically than horizontally, The guy had trouble with the car and all that, he had a scheme, and even though he started late, it was gigantic.
He was the best. He was the best.
I mean, he was an amazing comedian, and I gotta say, though, at this private funeral in Hollywood, on one side of his tent, was every big name in comedy, about 20 of them. And in one little corner was his son and daughter, and Jerry Stiller and Ann Mira, and me. We were the old guard.
Wow.
In fact, there's a memorial for Annie coming up shortly. She just passed away.
Yes.
And Jerry is, doing so-so. I love him. He's a wonderful man. I had this feeling of anger about him, even after he died. And I had sent a picture of us.
Feeling of anger about Rodney?
I did, because of all the heartache he caused his daughter towards the end. Melanie is a wonderful person, married to a plastic surgeon. His son is really not doing well. He's in his 50s, and he's had a lot of problems. He wasn't really very good with that boy. And, towards the end of his life, he'd call his father and say, "I'll tell you, I'm eating. Call back." I mean, stuff like that. And he had his wife, and she knew just how to muss his hair and make him feel good. But I just, what's there to do? I mean, nobody's perfect. I just feel like, I brought a child into the world, and that is that is my responsibility.
Yes, absolutely.
And to be there for them. And he was early in his life, but, later on. So when I sent this picture, I knew he was ill. I hadn't seen him in a while. Because, after about 11 or 12 years of practically being with him every day, every night, it's just the depression and the all about him thing. It was enough.
It's hard, it's draining. Yeah.
It was draining. But in any case, I sent this picture and a note, and I didn't get any answer. And I call up, and the butler answers, "Dangerfield residence," which made me snigger anyway. I said, "This is Robert Klein calling. I'd like to speak to Mr. Dangerfield." He said, "Just a moment, I'll get him." And a while I'm taking, and then Joan gets on the phone, his wife. "Hello, yes, Robert Klein. I want to speak to Rodney." "Oh, well, he told me to handle his calls." I said, "Well, I'd like to talk to him, And she, "Well, he's at the doctor now." And I knew that was a lie because the butler
said, yeah.
So at the funeral, I said to her, "Why, I sent him this picture. I never heard from him." And she said, "Well, Rodney." I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He gets angry. "About what? I'd hardly seen him in the last 10 or 15 years. She said, "Well, that's it, I guess." But his daughter told me she could.
It was a picture of what, though? A picture of who?
A picture. It's in my book of the three of us, myself, Rodney, and his little boy who was 8 years old on my shoulders in a pool in Miami Beach.
Oh, okay.
It was a wonderful old picture, and his daughter told me, and it became pretty apparent that she was sort of keeping him from his friends at the end, and not, with the call and interfering and all that. So it disgusted me. And
I'm sorry. Go
they're
ahead.
trying to. No, never mind. They want to. Some PR person contacted me about a Rodney Dangerfield Institute of Comedy in Manhattanville College. She wants to bankroll this thing, and of all things would like me to be in charge of it. I never spoke to her about it, but there's PR people, and I'm not the least bit interested. And I called up his daughter. She never heard of it. And if she weren't involved, I certainly wouldn't be involved.
You are the forerunner of observational comedy. You're a legend, and I thank you so much for coming on with me today.
Thank you.